too. How you doing?
Cool.
I'm playing tomorrow. Headed for Florida for board meetings for 3 days. Just enough time. It's nice here.
Like gone out there a few times, going around there. So busy, you never see. Like 3 weeks of work and 2 kids that are involved in it. Do you see they have a dog that looks just like our boy? Just the little puppy.
Because the other day you were walking, I was like, which one is that?
My mom, I mean, boy was outside, it's like, it's just like.
Which you would think would be from an engineering point of view. Get that right.
Hi, Lisa.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Okay.
Steve's out front.
I'll call to order tonight's Fishers Plan Commission meeting for March 2nd, 2022. If you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Kay, roll call, please.
Yes. Mr. Stewart. Here. Mr. Zimmerman. Mr. Fain. Here. Ms. Logan.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Moulter.
Here.
Ms. Stoller.
Here.
Mr. Richards. Ms. Lang. Mr. Stevenson.
Here.
Thank you.
We do have a quorum to conduct tonight's meeting. We have had the minutes circulated. I would entertain a motion.
Moved.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor use the vote and sign aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Howard, I would request that item, under item number 7C, Highline project, if we could move that to the front of the agenda. That's a relatively minor item and would just like to move that to the front before the public hearing occurs.
Thank you. I concur. I would entertain a motion to move that item 7C. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor use the vote and sign aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. So we will move that to now. And we have Lisa Bradford with staff to present for us.
Thank you. For the record, Lisa Bradford, City Controller. The item before you is the second statutory step related to the resolution for the Highline project. So on February 21st, the Redevelopment Commission adopted the resolution, which basically means that we agree that this project conforms to the area that it is going into and that it fits the plan for the 106th and Kincaid area. So that's what this resolution before you does. It affirms that you are in agreement that this project meets the collective goal of that area.
Thank you. Any questions from staff members?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do we rule on this?
It's required that they give you notice that we go there. You have to approve it. There's no option to it, so it's best to do the approval process. But by law, we have to anyway.
Okay.
It's really public notice.
Okay. Well, we can.
So we can vote. Okay.
So we do have a motion and a second. Kay, roll call, please.
Yes. Mr. Stewart? Mr. Fain? Ms. Logan? Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Moulter?
Aye.
Ms. Stoller? Mr. Stevenson?
Yes, the motion does carry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lisa, thank you. Go to dinner.
Before we get started, the staff has asked me, board members, to make sure we use our microphones so we can record what we're sharing today. And we will go to the next matter on the agenda, RZ 21-7, Bell Canto, the Cottages PUD. This was continued from our February meeting. Fager Drinker, on behalf of Bell Canto, is requesting a rezone of 24 acres from PUD-C to PUD-R for 292 multifamily units. The property is generally located on the southeast corner of East 136th Street and Cynthia Ann Road, and we have staff to present for us.
Yes, thank you. Megan Vukasich with the City of Fishers Planning and Zoning Department. So this item before you is a rezone request for a new PUD ordinance called the Cottages. So it is located on the southeast corner of 136th and Cynthia Ann, highlighted here in the red. So to go over the current zoning of the property today, it is zoned within an existing PUD ordinance, which is the Britton Falls PUD. It is identified as Area 5 within that PUD ordinance and allows for C1 and C2 uses. The Fishers 2040 plan, we have a future land use map as a part of that, and that identifies this area as a neighborhood service center. So the land uses that align with that neighborhood service center are really commercial retail to serve the surrounding neighborhoods, also some office as well. So the current zoning does align with what the Fishers 2040 plan shows. Here is the proposed concept plan for the development. So this is a multifamily rental product. The underlying zoning that's proposed within the PUD ordinance is M2 multifamily. This would be approximately 30 buildings and a total of 292 multifamily units. So within each one of those buildings is approximately 8 rental multifamily units. There are proposed to be 2 access points, one off of Cynthia Ann and one off of 136th Street. All of the internal roads are proposed to be private. The petitioner is not planning on stubbing to the property to the south, which is currently undeveloped land. And this was something that staff would like to see in any future requests for development. And then also on the right-hand side, you can see the proposed elevation that they are requesting be incorporated into the PUD ordinance. With this item, we did not see it on the PUD agenda this evening. This would go to PUD committee next month. So for public comments, we have received written remonstration from 18 individuals. Those individuals largely come from the neighborhoods Hunters Run, Britton Falls, and Barrington Estates. So you can see those areas labeled here on this location map. The concerns largely include traffic, density in the school system, and what we heard from most of the comments is that they would rather see commercial, which does align with what the current zoning of the property is. Since creating this presentation and writing the staff report, we did receive additional remonstration today that was forwarded to you all. That was a petition that was signed by the residents of Barrington Estates. I also want to mention that staff holded a neighborhood meeting a couple weeks ago on February 16th. This was a virtual meeting in which staff proposed these hypothetical concept plans. I want to be clear that these concept plans don't necessarily reflect any proposed development. These were really just for conversation purposes. And so the first concept was largely single-family residential. The second concept was a mix of residential and commercial. And the third concept was commercial only. We did record that session and have it posted on the public website where we gathered feedback through a survey up until last Monday. And you can see the results here of one of the survey questions, which is, in your opinion, which concept is best suited for this area? 64% of the participants did feel that Concept C, that commercial only, was the best use for the area. And so again, that does align with what the current zoning is today. Some additional things to mention in this area, this isn't related to the concept plan, but I just want to point it out since we have received a lot of remonstration, is that our engineering team is currently looking at 136th Street improvements. This is estimated for 2024, so it's in the design process, but because we heard so many concerns with traffic, I just wanted to highlight that we are planning on doing some road improvements out on 136th Street. Staff does recommend an unfavorable recommendation. The reason for our unfavorable recommendation is that we don't feel this project aligns with the Fisher's 2040 vision. We feel that the fit of the area just doesn't make sense. We would rather see multifamily projects in areas that are supported by walkable, amenity-rich environments. And there's been a significant amount of remonstration, and the feedback that staff has received from residents is that they would prefer to see the zoning allow for commercial only as it sits today. So with that, we would recommend an unfavorable recommendation. I will now.
I have a question for staff, and if anyone else has any, we can entertain those as well. Megan, you mentioned the virtual neighborhood meeting. Can you share with us, I guess in general, how was that attended? What were the numbers as it relates to that?
Yeah, so we did ask for people to RSVP. We had about 200 people RSVP for the event, and then about 99 participants showed up. And then through the survey that was on our public website up until this last Monday, we got just under 300 respondents on that survey.
Is that usual to have 99% to participate in RSVP?
No, not typical for public meetings. I do think that the virtual nature has made it more accessible for people to attend public meetings, but yeah, that was the most I've seen so far with my time at Fisher's.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of staff? Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay.
And I'll now turn it over to the petitioner.
Okay. Yeah, I can do Elmo if I can. What I need, appreciate it. Be awesome.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the Plan Commission. For the record, my name is Steve Harden. I'm a partner in the law firm of Fagery Drinker. I'm pleased to be here representing Bel Canto this evening. From Bel Canto with me is Sandy Avery. I appreciate Megan's remarks, and we appreciate her professionalism throughout the process. We did recognize from the very beginning that this property is currently zoned commercial, and one of the ideas that we thought was appropriate to go down the path to explore this potential opportunity with the city was to really look at from a land use perspective. So I'm going to address just for a few minutes the land use issue, and then Sandy's going to come up and talk about the project specifically, and then be happy to answer any questions. Because this area of Fisher's is a growing area. There's still undeveloped land, and it's very appropriate for the Plan Commission, the staff, the neighbors, and the City Council to take a look at it. And so let me just walk through a few things here with you. So I think, as Megan mentioned, today currently the property is zoned commercial. It allows for C1, C2, so a gas station, big box retail up to 75,000 square feet is permitted. And so when Bel Canto first started looking at the property, one of their thoughts was, understandably, well, gosh, if most people view zoning and planning from their front porch and their back porch, this is a down zone from a more intense use to a residential use that is less intense than is permitted today. So there was a thought at the outset that this is something that the neighbors might actually embrace, to have a down zoning of the property, to not have a gas station and commercial uses right up against their neighborhoods. So that was the impetus at the beginning. So that's the current zoning. To give you a picture, let me go back to this. To give you an understanding of the amount of commercial between these two PUD ordinances, that's about 60 acres or so of commercial uses at this southeast corner. And as you might have seen in our packet, that's about the same acreage of commercial on all four corners combined at 116th and Oleo. So there's a Kroger Supercenter, BW3s, two pharmacies, a whole bunch of other restaurants, and Ace Hardware. There's a lot of commercial there on four corners. And the commercial here just on this one corner that is zoned is about 60 acres. So it's about the same amount of commercial land that could go onto this site. So just want to put that in context, because that's a lot of commercial on one corner in this area. And then from a planning perspective, it's a very interesting exercise to look at what's going on. This is the 2016, the original 2040 plan. And this area, when it was done just a few years ago, had 366 acres of commercial planned from Prairie Baptist to the county line. So if you remember, you might remember this was the original MedTech area that we worked on. And then this was going to be the MedTech corridor with commercial development all along the interstate and down to the south side of 136th Street. And there was also planned commercial here because it was already zoned, as well as on this corner, on the southwest corner as well. So there was 366 acres of commercial planned for this whole corridor. And then last year, most of you who were on the Plan Commission last year remember that during the comp plan update, oh, I'm sorry, I got one other little piece here. This is the future land use map. There's differing opinions within the city about whether there will ever be an interchange here. Some people say for sure there will be, maybe not in our lifetime. Some think it could be sooner or later. But the city's official thoroughfare plan does show a planned intersection or an interchange at this location of Cynthia Ann Road and I-69. So these are just some of the things that when you look at the land use, which is what the Plan Commission is charged with looking at, these are just some of the things that are relevant, that are important to be aware of when we look at why is somebody proposing a particular development in a certain area. So then here's the future land use map. That was the section of it for this area that was included in the comprehensive plan update that got approved by the City Council last summer. And I'll admit that I was here for almost all those meetings, listened to what was being discussed. I didn't realize that the comprehensive plan map was being changed like this. So that went from 366 acres of commercial all along the highway to now only 72 acres of commercial. So that was just in a few years when it was first approved, to then last summer when it got approved. And I went back after the fact to try to figure out, well, why was that? Was there an explanation for it? And the only thing I could find was that the director at the time, not Megan, her predecessor, said at one of the meetings that, well, we decided that there was already, a lot of commercial here at this corner, and we don't need any more commercial because we already have that much there. So with that understanding, then the thought was, okay, for this potential project, when Bel Canto came to me and said, what do you think about this use here? I said, well, this is really an exercise in looking at land use and planning, because it seems appropriate that there will be a desire and a need for commercial uses out in this area as the area continues to grow. But we then looked at it and said, well, there's a highway with a potential for an interchange, and the comp plan just got changed for a reason that was, the only reason I could find stated anywhere was because there was a thought that there was already 60 acres of commercial at this corner. Therefore, we didn't need any of the other commercial along the entire highway stretch. So then our thought was, maybe this is an appropriate time for the city to relook at the comprehensive plan specifically for these four corners at this interchange, and then really look at what's the right size. It seems appropriate. We've heard from the neighbors that commercial is desired out in this area. And I think as Megan mentioned, the PUD ordinance that governs the property today would allow a gas station up to 75,000 square foot, large retail, and a variety of other uses. But our thought was, why don't we let the community engage in re-looking at this intersection particularly, because perhaps people might think it's better to have commercial up against the highway. Maybe that's a better location up against the highway for some of the heavier commercial. And if that was the case, then the question would be, well, what's the highest and best use for this corner? And if the community felt commercial was good, but we'd rather it be up against the highway, well, then maybe that creates an opportunity then to look at more of a down zone for this corner to have some type of residential development. And I did watch the video of the charrette, the virtual meeting that the staff did. It was very well done, very well attended. It really only focused on 3 options for this corner. And unfortunately, we were hoping that there would be a bigger look at the entire 4 corners, because eventually there's going to be discussion about what happens at the intersection here, what type of uses are going to go at this intersection where there's a future interchange possibly, and highway, backing right up to it. So our hope was that the city would look at it and say, well, and the neighbors would look at it and say, where do we really think the commercial should go? And if there was a desire that the commercial be more appropriate on the north side, then we would have an appropriate discussion about land use here. The property has been zoned for commercial for 13, 15 years, and the landowner hasn't had any takers to want to do the development, and so that's why they were looking for an alternative use that would fit and complement hopefully the area. So that's what we looked at the beginning and why we undertook the process of evaluating the land uses. And what we then suggested through our analysis of kind of good land planning, we thought that it would be appropriate to look at, if we had the chance to do the future land use map and provide some feedback and comment, our thought, just from years of experience, that it was appropriate to look holistically at all four corners, taking into consideration there's a highway, future interchange there, as well as existing residential surrounding the corners here on the south. And we were suggesting that there could be more of a residential development with a 4-acre node of commercial on the hard corner, and then the rest of the 3 corners a little bit more commercial, with the heaviest commercial up against the highway. So that was what our thought was and how we began the process. We understand that the neighbors, most of them said we're okay with commercial. We think we should, we'd like to keep it there for a variety of reasons, and that's the prerogative. That's the beauty of our process. And so I'm going to turn it over to Sandy Avery now. She's going to give you a brief overview of the project, make a few comments, and again, we're very appreciative and thankful for the city to allow them the opportunity to work through the process with the staff, and we will accept whatever the decision recommendation is, of course, of the Planning Commission. We appreciate your attention this evening. Sandy, if you'd like to come up.
So I have had the pleasure of meeting some of you, and for others, it's nice to meet you for the first time. I am from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and our company is based out of Philadelphia. Our CEO was born and raised in Hamilton County. She worked for the Gene Glick Corporation for about 15 years. So if you want to do any research on Jennifer Nevitt, you can call the Glick Corporation, and many of those who still work there know her and still call on her today for consulting. We intend to invest $350 million in this area, whether it be Fishers, Westfield, Lebanon, Pendleton, Greenwood. Those are the cities that we're focused on now. And each of these communities is going to be approximately $50 to $60 million investment in your community. This particular location is a little bit, it's our favorite type of design to build because it has a much older demographic and a very professional demographic with the hospitals and the medical technology and everything else that's going on in that area. And so we've designed a very low intensity, low density, 8-unit buildings that are only 2 stories tall. They all have a first floor entry. They all have a home office. They all have kitchen windows. They're designed to be more in keeping with condominiums. And so one of the things that we have taken on is we were asked by the city to hold a neighborhood meeting, which we did. We actually held 2. We held the required meeting where you gave us the list of names and we, held the meeting. And then we also went into the neighborhood and had a separate meeting with those individuals who weren't on the official invite list, because we wanted to get more than just 2 or 3 people's. And what we found a lot of times is that 2 or 3 people show up to the required meeting, which is what happened in this case. And they were more landowners who were looking to do something different with their land and potentially rezone as well. So they wanted to work with us on creating a master plan in that neighborhood. But what was interesting is there were a lot of, and Megan said, she had on her board, there were a lot of recurring patterns in what the neighbors said. And one of those is property values. The neighbors said, we don't want apartments because apartments will bring lower property values. Well, I know there are people in this city, in this state, and even in this room who heard apartments and thought, not in my backyard. When we get it, it happens everywhere we go. There are a lot of studies. We're happy to share them with you. It's one of the most studied with MIT and Harvard and the Joint Commission on Housing. They've all studied this very specific issue because it comes up in zoning so frequently. And what they found is apartments do not take down property values. But in fact, when you carefully craft the right product for the right location and you build it correctly and you engage in the community, you can actually raise values. Now, I can't tell anyone today whether your home located near this community is going to increase or decrease. What I can tell you is the statistics state that they don't lose value, but they typically gain value. And the reason I'm bringing that up is this particular product is exactly that. We studied the market, we studied the demographics, and we came in with a product that seamlessly fits into the community. So a lot of apartments will come in with a 4 and 5 story building, but when you're in an urban or suburban setting, in a semi-rural setting, you have to blend in with the 1 and 2 story houses. And so these are all 2-story. They're meant to blend in so that as you come from the interstate, you have your high intensity commercial, you blend into the multifamily, and that segues into your single family attached and single family detached. We then listened to the neighbors, and the neighbors said, but we want retail. So we've been out in the market trying to find retailers who will come into that neighborhood. And what they've all told us is that there's not enough rooftops. You need more rooftops. If you want us to come, you need to build more rooftops. So again, building this community would allow us to get the rooftops that we can then go out and help find retailers who want to come in. And there are several of them that do want to come into this area. They're just looking for a little more people and rooftops and houses. So we tried to listen to what the community said on that issue. I think Megan brought up traffic. That was another high priority issue that the neighbors told us. And we just wanted to make sure that you understood that we certainly understand nobody likes traffic. And if I'm living next to an empty lot today, there's no traffic on the empty lot. But the current zoning is a high intensity commercial. And what we're doing is down zoning to a lower intensity. And so we're actually gonna reduce some of the potential traffic that would be created by the commercial. So again, we're listening to the neighborhood. We're trying to make certain, we don't want the neighborhood to end up with 9 gas station pumps and a bowling alley or something other of that nature. They want certain things. And we want to be able to help give them those things. And so we've been working with the landowner to the north on commercial. We're working to the landowner on the south who wants to do attached single family and detached single family. So we've had several productive meetings trying to figure out how can we help build a cohesive community and build something that we're going to be proud of. Those of you who have not heard me before, we are a legacy builder. We're not a merchant builder. And there are 2 very distinct types of builders. The merchant builder comes in, they build it cheap, and within 2 to 3 years, they sell it and they move. We're a legacy builder. We're building it for 20 years. It's gonna have the best of everything, because I don't wanna have to fix it. I don't want the neighbors to have to fix it. I don't want the people who live there to have to fix it. I want it to be built right. I want it to be built to a single family grade product that they can be proud to call home. And right now, 50% of the United States is a renter. And most of them are renters by choice. And this particular option gives those people who want to live in this neighborhood the option to do so without home ownership for whatever reason. If they're upsizing, downsizing, going in, they've lost a spouse, or they're moving into the neighborhood and they need a place while they build for a year. So we're trying to look at, the demographics and who would live here, and how can we build a product that they're going to be proud to live in for a long time. And so with that, I did want to say I thought it was interesting. When we first started this process, everybody said, why do you want to build out there? Why do you want to go out in rural? And Steve can tell you had many conversations that not everybody wants to live in walkable. And a lot of times zoning says, we want you to live in a walkable community. Oh, but you got to have 2 cars per apartment because everybody drives everywhere. So in this particular application, there are people, just like all of you, have a choice. Some of you want to live in a high-rise building. Some of you want to live in a garden home. Some of you want to live on 10, 12 acres of land. People want to have choices, and everyone wants to have a choice in their housing, and that includes apartments. Not everyone wants to live in urban high-rise. Some people want to live in this quaint garden cottage community. And it was interesting that the housing study came out and put apartments, recommended housing on the same intersection. So we know that other people are looking at this and seeing this is a great intersection for apartments. And we're asking that you would consider downzoning the commercial land to allow us to build these to better serve the community and become involved and be productive in this community. We want to serve here. We want to be involved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions from the board members of the petitioner? If not, I will open the public hearing at this time. Anyone who's wishing to address the board can approach the podium. Please give us your name and address. However, before we do that, I want to share that the Plan Commission has adopted rules as it relates to the guidelines regarding our public hearings. So we will request those who are wanting to talk to limit their comments to 2 minutes. However, if we have someone who is representing a group, they will have 5 minutes to make their presentation. And hopefully we won't have a duplication of the same comments. So if you hear someone who's already shared something, the board hears that, and we appreciate that as well. So with that, we will open the public hearing.
And real quick, I just put this location map up, so that way if you are speaking and you want to point out where you live on the map, you are free to do so. So I just put up here for your all's context.
Thank you, Megan.
President Stevenson, members of the commission, my name is Greg Zubek, and before I go on the clock, I guess I want to say a couple of things. I have a packet of exhibits, and I understand that exhibits can be submitted at the hearing today according to the rules, which I read, and I'm happy to pass those out to the members of the commission. I know I only have 5 minutes. It might help if I pass these out. Some places, some commissions don't want them because I guess they don't want paper anymore. And so I'll certainly defer to the commission's wishes, but I think it would be helpful. I just have 5 or 6 exhibits that I would go through. I certainly have an extra copy for Megan and one for the petitioner. If I can do that, if that's all right.
Yes, Mr. Zubak, you can.
Do we have enough?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. Okay, that's good. Let me just set up here if I can. Okay, thank you, Mr. Stevenson. I appreciate the fact that I only have 5 minutes. I'm going to go quickly. My name is Greg Zubek, and I'm an attorney with offices at 156 East Market Street in Indianapolis, and I'm here representing the Barrington Estates Homeowners Association. And if you look at your the packet that I just presented, you'll see a map. The first thing that you'll see in there is a map, and you'll see that the subject property is shown in red, and the Barrington Estates subdivision, this is on the very first page, is shown in green. And I think that shows up pretty well. So to tell you, my client is opposed to the rezoning sought, which would be a rezoning of these 23 plus or minus acres, a little more than 23, from PUDC to PUDR, and particularly for these 292 multifamily units, which translates to 12.3 acres per unit. Now, I heard about down zoning and making something less intense. We submit to you that 12.3 units per acre is a very high density and is not much of a down zoning. We typically think of industrial down to commercial to residential, and here we're talking about 12.3 units per acre on 25 acres, 292 units. The opposition from the homeowners of Barrington is unanimous, except for 2 people who didn't sign a petition. There are 48 lots in Barrington. There are 40 houses, and I think you were provided the petition signed by the owners, the residents in Barrington. All but 2 have signed. One apparently had some political reasons for not signing, and another one wouldn't sign anything. But the 38 have, and then someone who owns 3 lots for development has also signed in opposition to this. You see the aerial, and you can see that the Barrington Estates property is immediately adjacent to the subject property and is immediately to the east. The Barrington Estates subdivision has been there for some approximately 20 years. It is almost built out now, and these are larger homes and with larger lots. You can further see, and this is sort of interesting, I guess we have a different view of the world, but that's what makes hearings like this happen. There's a lot of residential development down here, and it's not just in Barrington, but if you look to the south, there's a lot of residential development. If you look to the west, there's a lot of residential development. So this issue about, well, we need more rooftops, I think that my client certainly would beg to differ on that and would suggest that if anything, the retail and the commercial would be an appropriate fit because there are lots of rooftops in the area. The next thing I want to talk about, and this is in item 2 in your in the matters that I passed out to you. I went back, and I'll be brief because I only have 5 minutes, but I went back, and in 2007, when this planned unit development was amended the first time, this was put in for this commercial use at C5. For the commercial use, the low density commercial 1, commercial 2. And there was provision for 1 large box, and there was also provision for 1 gas station on 25 acres with restrictions thereon relative to some screening and some berms and some other things. Then it came up again in 2013, and this is interesting, and that's the next thing in your packet, but again, because I only have 5 minutes, I'm not going to go through it all. Those same provisions were adopted in 2013 with the same owner, and the owner and the owner of this property is, not the petitioner, but the owner of the property is Rangeview Land Partners, LLC. And so Rangeview Land Partners, LLC took title to this in 2012. And so when this came up in 2013, that owner certainly had the opportunity to participate in the process and say, wait a minute, I own 25 acres here. I don't think we ought to have this as commercial. I think it ought to be residential or something else. And the owner never objected. Now here we are, and 8 years later, and a petitioner comes along and says, I want to put 292 multifamily units on here when this has been zoned for this commercial use as part of this substantial planned unit development for many, many years. And now we see this change.
And Mr. Zubak, I'll interrupt you just briefly. The time has expired. However, I did notice that it did start before you commenced your presentation, so I will indulge you an additional minute.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson, and I'll be very brief with my other comments on this. I'll just say this. I looked at this property online, and the owner and it's listed. I'm dropping things. The owner listed it for $4.8 million, and the description is, great retail development site on I-69 corridor at exit 10. Corner lot zone PUD C1, C2. Lots of residential development. And we heard today, apparently from the petitioner, they don't agree with the owner on this. Single user site up to 75,000 square foot, supermarket anchor. Great demographics for this location. Hamilton County fast growing. Land proposed use, commercial, rental, medical, storefront, retail office. All these things are things that my client, the neighborhood immediately adjacent with 40 homes built and 8 more to be built, is agreeable to. And we submit to you that we're not asking for anything here. We're remonstrating and saying this has been through the Plan Commission as part of this plan development. Now this is the 3rd time, twice for commercial. It's been up for public hearing. It's been set out for this commercial use with these restrictions. We respectfully request that the commission make a negative recommendation. Agree with staff that this should not be rezoned for 292 units and 12 units per acre on this site. Thank you for your time. I appreciate the additional time, President Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Zubak. Do we have anyone else from the audience?
Good evening. My name is Scott Huntsman. My address is 13543 Browning Drive. I live in Barrington Estates. And avoiding being redundant, respecting everyone's time, I guess I'd reflect back on what I'd call a foundational comment when Mr. Harden was walking through his business case. It was, we thought the neighbors might engage in this and might favor this. I think it's clear the neighbors have spoken and said, no, we're not interested in this. And as we just covered, it's been through this process twice. This is the third time, and our position has not changed. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Miller. I'm a resident of Britton Falls, right about there. So right down the road from this proposed project. A group of my neighbors and my husband and I are opposed to this project for reasons that we have included in the letter that we submitted and in concurrence with the other letters submitted by other people from other nearby subdivisions. We believe that the density will impact negatively property values, will also decrease the security of the neighborhood. We believe apartments lead more to transient occupants, and that will decrease the security of our neighborhood. In the proposed material from the petitioner, their rent doesn't seem consistent by square footage, even with projects available today. And in 2 or 3 years, when their apartments might be available, they simply couldn't be renting them to people who would not be transient at the prices that they're listing in their materials that we had available. In closing, the neighbors that we associate with in Britton Falls concur with the other comments and are opposed to this project. I would also like to thank the planning and zoning staff for arranging that Zoom meeting. It was very helpful to a number of the neighbors to actually learn more about the process, and hope that as other projects come forward, that that's a process that you will use to reach out to the community. I think it was very effective for us and hopefully for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Miller. Anyone else?
Yes, hi, good evening, Mr. President and members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for your time. My name is Jeff Jurecki. I reside at 16264 Remington Drive in Barrington Estates. My wife and I just moved into our new home about 2 or 3 months ago, decided to build our forever home in Barrington Estates. Very excited for the location. Our home is on a lot of about 1.5 acres. Most of the homes in Barrington Estates are an acre plus. We were just devastated to hear of this proposed building project. I think for me, one of the things that I just want to add is that I know in the presentation they talked about, well, we can move the commercial across the road and things like that. For us, and I think for many of our neighbors, it's not about that. It's about protecting the original intent of the land and the zoning that's in place now. We do not want apartments adjacent, to our, to our area, and we hope that you will vote to not allow this project to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for your time. I'm Joe Goldstein. I live at 16279 Remington Drive. Barrington Estates has always been in partnership. We've always worked well with the Planning Committee. The original PUD that was put in place was a PUD that Barrington Estate was actively involved in the creation of. We partner. When there was a request to cede that PUD for the development of Hunter's Run, we worked with that development. We wanted to see the area grow. We wanted to see positive things happen. When we look at the development under question and the use of this, my husband and I are very much against it. We want to stick to that original zoning. 75,000 big box is not a huge Kroger. I mean, 75,000 big box retail space is much smaller. And I think within that PUD, there's also an agreement on how many pumps can be in that gas station. It is not a 9 or 18 pump gas station. So we respectfully ask that you vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other presenters or remonstrators, I will close this portion of the public hearing. Any comments from board members?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make a couple comments. I've met this group. I think the group is an outstanding group. I think they make a very good product. I think they stand behind their product. My issue isn't with that. My issue is the location. And I've been very succinct in every single time I've met with you guys, that I think we would love to have you partnering in Fishers, just we need to find another spot. I've been on council now and on planning commission for a long time, 4 terms on council, so I've seen and heard a lot. I have also registered only a couple of items where I've had this much remonstration. Normally when we do these items, Megan, help me if I'm wrong, 20 is a lot. Okay, there was another item there which people came out of the woodwork about trash collection. That was the other one that maybe has superseded this one, but that's a whole separate can of worms. But yeah, the remonstration that's coming out in this speaks clear volumes to me as to the desire of their neighborhood, and it is their neighborhood. As it relates to other projects that are going in, you can look at Ingalls. Ingalls is building houses like crazy over there. Okay, there's other houses going in all around there. We just approved some more homes down in Southeastern. I mean, the rooftops are gonna come. I'm not in disagreement with Steve, however, okay, I don't remember us rezoning all that to R2 either, so I think I would like to at least maybe take another crack at those corners for some sort of commercial.
And just to clarify, we didn't rezone with the comp plan, but we did, the land use division, designation.
Idea to 2040, because I'm a firm believer that there will be an intersection there. It may not be in our lifetime, but there will be an intersection there, no question about it. That's the next spot where it's gonna go. So for a lot of those reasons that I look at, again, Sandy, I think it's a great product, and I have nothing bad to say about you guys. You guys have been super to deal with and very kind and courteous the whole time. And I'm not with not saying let's not stop trying to talk together to find another place to put this, okay? But I for one, am gonna make a motion right now to make an unfavorable recommendation to City Council, because I'm gonna, and again, I'm just being consistent with what I've said all along, and now listening to the abundance of remonstration there and listening to my neighbors, and I'm not in their district, so they don't vote for me, but I still listen to you guys. So, and I appreciate everything that you guys are saying, and do listen to all that remonstration, that I just think we can find a better location for you. Those are my comments.
Yeah. I can share my comments unless fellow board members have comments themselves.
Yeah, I'd like to say, I've met with the developer as well, and we have been, both numerous members of the city council, several members of this committee have consistently said, we just don't think that this is the right location for this product. I would prefer to see the developer possibly look for another place within Fishers and work on a collaborative manner with the city, the administration, and this body and the city council, and let's come together with something where everyone agrees that it's a good product for the community. I agree, the remonstration on this has been more than what I ever expected. But I think it's, looking back, I kind of thought there would be remonstration. I just didn't think that there would be to this level. And I think that with the administration, the city council, this body and the residents who the city council is going to listen to. You know, I'm going to agree with Councilor Peterson and his thoughts, and I will be recommending an unfavorable recommendation to the council. So I will second it.
Well,
I
don't
will
second it yet. I'll make my
Okay.
comments, and then we'll entertain a motion at that point. I echo the sentiments of my fellow board members. I am a huge proponent of multifamily projects, and there is still a need for that here in the city of Fishers. But I agree with their sentiments that the location is not conducive for that type of project there. And I don't believe it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, the Fishers 2040 comprehensive plan. So with that, I would be supportive of an unfavorable recommendation as well. If there's no other comments from board members.
Motion stands.
We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. And can you specify your motion for the record?
Yeah, make a motion to make an unfavorable recommendation to city council.
And we have a second to that motion. Roll call, please, Kay.
Mr. Stewart. Mr. Fain. Ms. Logan. Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Moulter.
Aye.
Ms. Stoller.
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes. And the motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we don't have any old business, but we do have staff communications.
Yes, and give me 1 second, we got logged out of the computer. Would we be able to, Jonah, could you log in?
Got it, boss.
Thank you. All right, so just to give you guys a summary of council from last month, the Courtyards of Fishers, which was that product that we saw from EPCON where they utilized that side yard, that was approved by council by a vote, I believe, of 6-3. So that is now going through the approval process for platting and the civil plans. I did want to give you guys an overview of our housing study findings. Unfortunately, Dawn, who did sit on that committee, is unable to be here tonight, but certainly we can bring this up at a future meeting to get her thoughts. But just going to go over some high-level trends that we saw as a part of that study, and then give you guys an overview of what the recommended strategies are moving forward. So some demographic trends. What they found is that the population has grown rapidly. So it's increased here in Fishers 26% from 2010 to 2019. So we are still continuing to grow. With that, we are slowing a bit in population growth in the coming decade. So although we're growing, it's gonna not be growing as fast here in the next 10 years. The fastest growing population segment is seniors 65 plus. So that is really the aging population that we're gonna see of existing residents. And then what we're seeing for new residents moving to Fishers is that they're 3 times as likely to be young adults aged 25 to 34 years of age. So that's really exciting for our community, knowing that we're bringing in kind of that young professional adult population. Nearly half of employed Fishers residents do commute to Indianapolis for work, so that's nothing new for us. So some rental market trends. So the multifamily rental market is extremely tight. It's about 0.9% vacancy rate. In a standard, quote-unquote, healthy market, you typically see that about 6 to 7%. So that shows you how tight our rental market is. 3-bedroom units are commanding very high rents at $1.66 per square foot, which is 4% higher than a 2-bedroom unit. This is unique to our community. Usually as you increase the square footage of rental units, you see a decrease in the price per square foot. But in our case, we are actually seeing an increase in price per square foot. So there is a demand there. Increase in percentage of family households are renting. So 30% of all of our rental units here in Fishers are single family homes. So we are seeing that. And this goes along with number 9, national single family rental companies are competing with home buyers. So we are seeing more investment companies now buying up these single family homes. For some for sale market trends, home prices have steadily increased in the last 5 years, 26% increase from 2016. Single-family home sizes have also increased by 42% since the 1990s. And the supply of homes for sale is extremely limited. So this is similar to the vacancy rate for rental units. The supply of homes, we are seeing about a 0.5 months of inventory. So that's the amount of time a home stays on the market. What we saw, again, in a normal or healthy market would be about 3 to 6 months of inventory. So again, extremely tight there. Redevelopment and teardowns are occurring in more mature neighborhoods, and we're seeing that in our South Village, which is the neighborhood directly south of the downtown district. So overall, the goal for housing is to ensure that there's high-quality housing options for Fishers residents in all life stages. So we want to make sure that whether you're a first-time home buyer or you are retiring and wanting to downsize, that you have a home here in Fishers. And so I'm going to just go over pretty high level the strategy recommendations. Again, these are just recommendations based on the housing study, not necessarily policies at this time. So one is to encourage a development of a variety of senior housing units. So that population 65 plus that we are expected to see an increase of in the coming years, we're going to need to increase our housing supply to support that demographic. And so increasing the supply of new lower maintenance housing suitable for senior living, that would be similar to that EPCON product that I just showed that was approved at council last month. And then we also would want to potentially identify new areas that are suitable for new zoning regulations, such as accessory dwelling units. So that might give aging adults an additional place to age in place. Second is encourage the development of housing types that attract and retain young adults. So that would be increasing the supply of denser residential structures, such as apartments, townhomes, and condos in walkable, amenity-rich areas. So just like we saw tonight, we agree that there is a need for denser housing, but really making sure that these are well supported by the surrounding neighborhood and making sure we're plugging them into the right areas. So being very intentional about where we're locating those. Maintaining a high-quality rental housing stock. So I would say this is going to be the focus moving forward, at least for the next year, what we try to tackle as a result of this housing study. So evaluating the feasibility of instituting regulations for investment properties. This has been a huge concern and a growing concern in our community, and so really looking at how we can ensure that we're maintaining that high quality rental housing stock even with these investment companies purchasing these single family homes. And with that, instituting potentially a rental registration program, an inventory for code compliance and property maintenance, so making sure that all properties are adhering to high property maintenance standards. And then lastly, the committee did recognize that there are certain populations with additional needs, so supporting social service providers and housing development organizations that provide housing for these populations. So that would be similar to the South Point Village apartment complex, in the downtown area, that was a social service provider providing that additional need for housing. So no action needed from you all. I just wanted to give that presentation. Any policy actions will come before City Council and Plan Commission if we are incorporating those into the Fishers 2040 plan.
Thank you, Megan.
Megan, I have a quick question. Is there any thought about short-term rentals? Because like we have an Airbnb in our neighborhood now, and so we've changed our bylaws and we're like, nope, this can't happen. It doesn't seem to fit with our neighborhood. People, it's right at a bus stop. People don't know. You don't know who's coming and staying. You know, it's just uncomfortable in our neighborhood. And so I didn't know, is that something that is being addressed at all? I mean, like I went to Jacksonville, Florida. They don't allow it. Zero. You know, I mean, so there's just, they don't want it to become a vacation place, destination for Airbnb or VRBO. I'm not saying we can't have it. I'm just wondering, is there going to be, like, would we consider capping it or a certain number or?
So I think that's what our legal team is looking at right now, is really what can we do within the legal parameters. I know that there's some state regulations around rental properties, and so we're looking into that. All right, any additional questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other agenda items, we have a motion. We are adjourned. Have a good evening. Now we're down to 4